What is it about Georgetown County that makes people smile? You'll meet one of the reasons coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Holiday Cottage at Brook Green Gardens here in Georgetown County. We're focused on Georgetown County. We're visiting with Tommy Bouchette, the former chairman of the board of the Georgetown County Chamber of Commerce. Good morning, Tommy.
Good morning, Greg.
Thanks so much for getting in.
Well, thank you for having me.
Last time we were together, we weren't in Georgetown County. We were over at Myrtle Square Mall, where the Herald used to be headquartered. Back in, I think, December or January. It was a heck of a long time ago.
Yeah, it seemed like yesterday, but it's been 8 or 10 months probably.
And it's great to get you back in, particularly since we are right in the middle of where your two prime offices are, one in Murrells Inland and one in Georgetown.
That's
so
right.
Between the two, you just popped in to see us this morning. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Yeah. Have you been out to the Holiday Cottage
before?
before?
As a matter of fact, we had an employee Christmas party here, and it was just a beautiful event, and we just had a great time.
This is amazing.
Oh, it is. It really is. And Brook Green is such a treasure for our local folks, and I believe a lot of people probably in the county doesn't realize just what's available to them. So
right.
I know with Bob Jewell becoming president, we'll probably see a lot more activity from local folks at Brook Green.
Oh yeah, and Bob was with us on Tuesday, and one of the things he really drove home, Tommy, was that idea of working so hard to take Brook Green out a little bit, to really focus on the local folks and make sure you've cultivated that local clientele, as well as continuing to get folks in from all over the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It is such a special thing. This is all in Georgetown County, 9,000 acre preserve here when you think of Huntington Beach State Park as well.
Well, I always say Georgetown County is one of the best kept secrets in the Southeast, or in the Southeast. So got a lot in Georgetown County.
Yeah, why do you think that, Tommy?
Well, I guess I'm a little biased. I kind of grew up in Georgetown County and over in Andrews, and I was raised in Williamsburg County, but Georgetown was always our shopping area. And through the years, I've just watched this county change, and we're between two dynamic markets. We've got Myrtle Beach in the north, and Charleston and Mount Pleasant keeps pushing back towards Georgetown every day. So I just think that we're going to see a lot of change in Georgetown County.
About right after Carolina People kicked off almost 2 years ago, we filmed down a little place called, I think it was Luden's down in Charleston, a real famous old nautical marine place, and found out later that the owners live in Georgetown County and drive down there. Sheila Butler and her husband, I can't remember the names, but drive down there every morning from Georgetown. When you're thinking about that and that idea of business right inside of Charleston, folks commuting down there on a regular basis from.
Well, especially commute, from Georgetown to Mount Pleasant is really a pleasant drive. The traffic is not heavy, and you've got a nice 4-lane highway, so it's not a bad commute at all.
Now, you said you grew up in Andrews, Tom.
That's correct, yeah.
And that's in Williamsburg County.
Well, Andrews is actually in Georgetown County, but just on the edge of it, and I grew up on a little farm outside of Andrews, and that was in Williamsburg County.
Wow, what was that like growing up on a farm?
It was good. It was a lot of hard work, long hours, and kind of prepared me to, do what I do today to a large degree. But had to have a lot of discipline. Nobody held your hand. You had to get up in the morning and go to work.
Right.
I was real fortunate to just have wonderful parents, and that always helps a lot.
Are they still in the farming business?
No. They passed away years ago. And
both? Actually,
I left the farm when I was old enough to get my driver's license at 15, and I got a job, but when I hit about 25, I wanted to figure out how to get back on the farm, and couldn't do it. It's become a very high-tech, large production type of business. Farming is not the way it was 25 years ago.
When you talk about that idea of early mornings and kind of helping prep you for what you're doing today, and obviously, and we haven't yet talked about Sunbank, but on that banking side where you're entirely with people, day in and day out, in a farming situation, albeit incredibly hard work, where you weren't with a lot of people.
Well, no, and obviously you pick up people skills, but the principles are the same.
Yeah.
I mean, you treat people right, treat people fair, you have respect for folks, and that's just natural things you do, and it's hard for somebody to train you how to do that.
Right.
If you've been around all your life the kind of people that believe in those values and principles, then it becomes pretty easy to have the people skill part of it. The disciplines of being able to get up and go to work and be at work every day are things that you have to do in order to be successful at anything, whether it's farming or banking.
What kind of crop were your family particularly involved in?
We did a little tobacco and corn, raising livestock. But back during that time, Greg, folks could take a small plot of land and raise some livestock, and if they had some children to work that was free labor, they could make a decent living. Particularly if they had a job outside the farm too, and a lot of people did. They had, they'd work at a mill or somewhere, and then they would have their children that kind of help them run the farming operation.
Did you have brothers and sisters growing up?
One brother, 2 sisters.
One brother and 2 sisters. Now, were the girls, your sisters, involved in that farming aspect as well?
Yeah, a little bit, but it still pretty much was an outdoor type of occupation.
How exciting! That's amazing. That really does help set the stage when you think about the kind of hours that you have to commit now. Obviously, having kicked off a bank, launched a bank locally in Georgetown County and on the south strand of Horry County back in early 2000. I mean, and something that took a long time leading up to that.
Oh yeah, a lot of. There was about a year of just organizational phase where there was nothing to do but just deal with different regulatory agencies. And it takes a while to do that.
I'm sure.
I always joke, people talk about banker's hours, and I say, well, there's banking hours and there's banker's hours. 2 different things. The bank may not open up to 8:30 or 9, but most bankers nowadays, it's such a competitive environment. Most bankers put in a lot more hours than just hours when the bank is open.
Oh yeah. Just share with viewers real quick. I want to talk about founding Sun Bank and those aspects. And obviously, the bulk of our viewers are in the PD in southeastern North Carolina. May not have one-on-one access with Sun Bank, but obviously could tap it online if need be. Right. But that aspect of when you talk about banking is very competitive. What does that mean when you say it's competitive?
Well, I guess years ago. At least the perception that the public had about bankers, they went to work, stayed in office, and people came to them.
Right.
But like most businesses and most industries, the competition in terms of so many more choices for the consumer is out there. I mean, if you look at Murrells Inlet, for example, when we decided to form Sun Bank, there was one branch down there.
One other branch of another bank?
That's correct, yes. And that branch was not even open during business hours to walk-in traffic. It was just for deposits only. Well, within 2 weeks of the time we announced we were going to form a bank, another bank that has branches in Myrtle Beach decided they were going to build a branch, and within 2 years we've had 4 brand new competitors just in that little Murrells Inlet area.
No way.
And the interest rate environment that we've been in the last few years leads to that competitiveness as well. Rates is at a 41-year low. So everybody's out there trying to get a little piece of the pie.
Well, now, how does that work? Just a basic banking, a keep it simple, stupid type thing. How does the banking work? I mean, when you say interest rates are low, does that make your business tougher because there's not a bigger margin there? Or?
Thinner margins.
Okay.
Exactly. But
explain that to a viewer who may not have familiarity with it.
Well, banking is really kind of a simple business. Sometimes people have a tendency to make things more complicated.
Right.
But basically, we just, buy money or rent money. You'll bring us money and we'll pay you some rate on it if it's in a money market or CD. And we'll turn around and lend that money out, and the difference is our gross spread. No difference than if you were buying shoes and, selling those shoes at retail level and you were buying at wholesale. Money's pretty much the same way. And there's a lot of peripheral things that have to happen in order for you to be able to do that.
Right.
Needless to say, we're an extremely regulatory-driven type of industry, so we have to keep pretty good records. And it's just a lot of peripheral things, but at the end of the day, it's just, we buy money at one price and sell it at another.
Tommy, that is a powerful notion, and that is very keep it simple, stupid. That is great. I mean, you're buying money and renting it out.
That's exactly
right. The amount you rent it out to, that difference versus what you paid for is y'all's profit.
That's correct. And out of that gross profit, we've got to pay everyone's salary and benefits and health insurance and all the things that go along with it. So when you're in an environment like we are now, where the prime rate, which is what most people are kind of familiar with, the Wall Street prime, now at 4 1/4. Well, if you have to pay 3% for a CD, that's not much of a spread to cover overhead. Now, we don't pay, like every bank, we have core deposits that perhaps, people have a small business account where they're not earning interest. So the trick is to gather as much of those as you can and try to reduce your overall cost. Now, when interest rates are at 8 or 9%, then hopefully you've got a lot larger spread, and consequently you can, do a little better on your margin.
But at the same time, you're also paying the customer
a higher rate.
To rent that money.
That's correct.
You give maybe 5%, and then you make 3% if you loan it out at 8 or 9.
That's correct. And the bigger you get over the years, the more small non-interest bearing accounts you gather. through small consumer type deposit accounts or small business accounts that you're not paying that high CD rate on.
Uh-huh. How interesting, Tom. I mean, that is something that I bet a lot of folks have never really thought about, that idea of banks. Now, how would it differ in a community? How do banks actually differentiate themselves? What are some of the ways that banks go about, whether it's, and I know our focus, a lot of our focus on Georgetown County and some of the amazing things, and we are so thankful that you helped open that door to us for Linwood Wilson, Mayor Wilson, who was with us, who's also with Sun Bank. When we filmed, along with Steve Jones, we were down at Horry Georgetown Tech's Georgetown campus about a month ago and had a great week down there. Learned a heck of a lot about Georgetown County while we were there. But just that aspect of how do banks differentiate themselves, whether we think about community banks or regional banks or national banks or supranational.
Sure.
How do y'all go about when you talk about y'all differentiating yourself with the other four that have opened up in Murrells Inlet even?
You know, money has become, Greg, for the most part, nothing but a commodity, like a pound of coffee or sugar or whatever. And the price for that commodity is pretty much out there to everybody. Now, our only real differentiation for a small community bank is to be able to offer better service, a little bit more personalized service. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, every bank nowadays would like to say that they offer personalized service, but in reality, the smaller you are, in most cases, the better you can be at that. Mm-hmm. And that's our real strong suit. I mean, we're not real concerned about the large $20 million perhaps hotel deals. That's not our cup of tea. But for the small entrepreneur that is working hard, trying to make a living, that needs a relationship one-on-one with a bank, or a banker really more, and the banker is more important than the bank in most cases. But when we hire people, we really try to instill that in their mind, that they're dealing one-on-one with one customer at a time.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the things y'all go about making if a viewer, let's say one of our viewers a viewer in Horry County, or even a viewer in Bennettsville, let's say,
sure,
is going in and wanting to communicate with is a potential entrepreneur, a small businessman or woman. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that a banker in a community bank or other bank, but in that personal one-on-one relationship, would be looking for? Let's say if Sun Bank was in Bennettsville, what would your men or women be looking for from that small business person?
A lot of people think, Greg, that the first thing a banker looks at is the collateral for that loan, and really that's not true at all. Collateral is certainly a component of it, depending on how long the term is going to be for the loan. But the first thing is character. Any good lender that's been around a while will tell you, if you can't get past character, you can't go any farther, regardless of collateral. Mm-hmm. We're not what's called an asset-based lender. An asset-based lender says, okay, if you'll give me something worth $100,000, I'll lend you $50,000. Well, we don't do that. But number one is character. If we get past the character issue, the next most important thing is repayment ability.
And real quick on that character, when y'all are trying to gauge someone's character there, mm-hmm, is it just what y'all know about that person, or what you ask around in the community, or you ask their peers, or?
Well, we don't do, because of confidentiality.
Sure,
we don't share people's names.
Right.
However, if it's a contractor, we have other folks that we do business with and that we know, and we may very discreetly just have heard things over time, and we know this guy's got a good reputation or a bad reputation.
Right.
Of course, a credit bureau report, Equifax report, tells us quite a bit in that regard.
That's right. Go on to the next. I mean, if you're doing it in a step.
Okay, and then the next step is you try to figure out the repayment capacity. No bank ever wants to have a foreclosed piece of property or a repossessed, automobile or what have you. But we have to analyze what the existing repayment ability of that borrower is, either through past earnings or projected earnings. But once we determine what the earnings piece of that is, and we determine what the debt service is, if character is okay, then everything else starts to move along. And then if collateral is where it should be, that's pretty much a done deal. Mm-hmm.
That is very interesting. There's so much that goes into account there as a small business person. Each month I see it. The Myrtle Beach Area Business Journal, there's a little component from SCORE, mm-hmm, a group that helps small business get set up, retired executives in the area that really help folks highlight some of the needs so that they can interface better with bankers and have an idea of some of the things.
A big piece of that is developing a business plan, and it doesn't have to be anything real sophisticated, mm-hmm, but you have to have at least some basic knowledge of how you're going to create this income stream from borrowing money to try to generate enough to have a net profit, at the end of the year. So, and a lot of folks get into business without any type of real plan, and that's critical.
I bet. I bet that happens
Oh, yeah.
a lot, particularly in areas, not that the Strand, for instance, be indicative of that. It's probably indicative of every community.
Absolutely.
But it seems like a heck of a lot of businesses pop up and pop out.
That's correct.
Pretty dang quick.
Absolutely.
What originally prompted you all to found a community bank in Georgetown County, Tommy? And how did you go about figuring out who you would team up with?
Right.
And how do y'all go about raising the capital to make it happen?
Well, obviously it's a pretty drawn-out process, but initially what you do is just talk with some investors, some people's willing to put up the initial investment to start the process. There's
Right.
filing fees. Somebody, like in my case, I was working for another institution, so I had to quit my job and focus on this thing full time to start dealing with the regulatory authorities. We had to deal with 4 different regulatory authorities. Some folks, when they start a bank, which is a better way to do it in terms of quickness and simplicity, is to team up with a holding company or a larger bank. You know, for example, you may start a bank in your community where it's going to be the local, county bank, so to speak, but it may actually be owned by a parent company that has a bank in some other city or some other
Right.
location. That makes the process a whole lot easier, and there's some benefits to doing it that way. However, we chose to go along and become a Georgetown County-based institution, meaning that we're totally independent from any other holding company, and we are, we're a commercial bank. We went through the Office of Comptroller of Currency, which is our primary regulator. Some people do state banks. We're a national bank. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be national in terms of locations, but in terms of how we're regulated, we're able to be regulated from one institution, OCC, rather than the state and then the FDIC. So by being a national bank, we only have one set of examiners coming in per year.
So if you were a state bank, you'd be overseen by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation,
That's right.
as well as the state of South Carolina or North Carolina or wherever,
That's
whatever
right.
state you're in.
And they do independent examinations.
Separate
But
from
as an
each
OCC institution, we only have one set of regulatory authorities coming into the bank to do their examinations. Now, we still have audits and tons of other.
Right. You'd happily be open to being audited all the time. I mean,
Sure. And we have to be to other regulatory agencies. But as far as having an examination team come in and do a full scope review, being OCC, the FDIC will accept the national bank's findings.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've had several, and they've all turned out real well.
So you can still be a Georgetown County or a Georgetown and Horry County or an Horry County-based
absolutely.
bank or a Darlington or Marlboro-based bank,
Anywhere. Absolutely.
and still be associated with that. The OCC, it stands for what?
The Office of Comptroller of Currency.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So we can go anywhere we want to in terms of branches.
And that helps particularly when so much stuff's being done online.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Done online. If you founded a bank and it was a name like Carolina Bank or something like that, or Palmetto, or Sun Bank like y'all, that has a non-geographical focus necessarily, that a lot of folks may be interested in just banking online.
Sure.
Because they...
And there's been, at first when we were all caught up in that tech frenzy, a few years ago, there was a lot of online banks that came about, and some of them are still around, but most people, they want a combination of both. They want to be able to walk into a branch if they need to and talk to their banker, and then they want the convenience of online banking as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Very interested. Tommy, obviously a big focus on Georgetown County, and as we talked about earlier, sitting here in Georgetown County in this 9,000-acre preserve, obviously out here at the Holiday Cottage. I heard something the other day about is it a local option sales tax maybe that may be kicking off or pursuit of that in Georgetown County. Do you know anything about that?
Actually, I do. I'm the treasurer of a committee that has been formed to explore that as a possibility. And, without going into too much detail now, because that's another whole show, basically the local option sales tax, if it gets put on the referendum as we plan for it to be, it will take all the revenue from a 1% increase in sales tax and go to property tax relief. It won't be used for any other projects. It's just to reduce property tax. And in Georgetown County, the property tax has really been increasing so much, it's become a burden for a lot of homeowners. And we see this as a way to have a grassroots effort, if you will, to try to control some of that increase in property taxes.
This is just in Georgetown County?
That's correct.
Right.
And the other thing that we have going for us in Georgetown County is that we have so many tourists that will actually help pay, some of that property tax burden that we have. So.
Tommy, does it really matter that local dollars stay here in the community? I mean, does it really matter that y'all are based, the principal backers and otherwise are in Georgetown or in the Palmetto State? I mean, does it really matter these funds stay here in the community?
Oh, yes.
Why?
Well, you know, it's kind of like keeping your dollars at home, and that's always been something that I think most people understand. But every dollar that we have, and as the years go on, we become a bigger institution, all those dollars go to local advertising, you know, local charities. I mean, we, you know, being a bank, we're inundated, like most small businesses are, with folks that have wonderful causes, you know, that they need, you know, some financial support on. And we have to pick and choose the best we can. But as we get larger, those donations to all the different local charities or local organizations will increase. Plus, we're providing jobs for our folks right here in our community. So,
so it really does matter.
It does matter. And I think it matters for any small business, not just banking, if they're located in their hometown or home community.
You know, there was that aspect, of course, in when you think about chambers of commerce, and those folks, chambers obviously have to represent both local and state and national companies.
Sure. Right.
You think about a chamber of commerce in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Right.
They're very happy at the fact that a little company founded there in 1962 and is now the world's largest company.
Of course.
When you think about that idea in Bentonville, they're very happy that Walmart was locally owned and operated at one point there,
Sure.
and is now a little bigger than that.
That's correct.
And so I'm sure in any community you're excited about that component. That's very interesting. And that really helps community banks differentiate. Now you're talking about some of the banks having that parent company. Are they still community banks? I mean, if you've got the parent company in another town.
They're still a community bank. You know, in some cases, depending on how large that parent company is, that local bank that's owned by some other institution, you know, they may not have quite as much autonomy as we do.
Right.
You know, with us being locally, you know, managed and owned right here in this community, we're in a position to make decisions a lot quicker typically. But it's still, if it's a local community bank, even though they may be owned by someone else, they do a great service to their community.
Tommy, I love that quote I saw about you in an area business journal. I like to tell my folks to create a sense of being quietly aggressive. You know, of course, I read that. I'm wondering, what does he mean exactly by that? We're very aggressive in developing relationships with people. We're day in, day out, solid people. When you talk about being quietly aggressive, is that a community bank phrase, or is that a phrase of Tommy Bouchette, or is that a...
Well, I'm not sure, Greg, but...
I hope I'm not misquoting you.
No, that's exactly right. What I tell my folks is, look, you know, we want to be out into every arena we can to provide lending, to provide banking services, whether it be, you know, ACH, which some companies need, you know, automatic clearing services. Anything to do with banking, we want to be able to do it. At the same time, you know, we don't want to be the loudest guy in the room, or we don't want to always be promising things we can't deliver. We want to sit down first and understand what that client needs. You know, take the time to listen to what he needs. And if we can provide what he needs, and we can do it in a way that is beneficial to both of us, then we'll be very aggressive in terms of the way we structure the deal, the way we price it, the flexibilities that we can afford them. But we're just not out running around telling everybody we're the best bank in town. You know, we prefer to let folks get to know us, and our actions speak for itself.
I remember when we were together back in December, there was one thing you talked about. This is our house, and we treat anyone who comes in as a guest. Right. And that facility there, and that, I think y'all have a community room.
We do.
There, and you may have Linwood may have talked about having a community room down in Georgetown as well.
One of the things when we designed our building, particularly the Murrells Inlet building, we have a very large, what some people would call a boardroom, a conference room, but we choose to call it a community room. And, you know, any civic or any organization, even some private businesses that need a space that they can use, we'll allow them to use it free of charge.
Since there's banker's hours and there's banking hours, Tommy, and I know you live by the banker's hours, which is some crazy hours, do you have any spare time to slow down? And I know you and Ann spend a lot of time together, obviously, but do you have some time to slow down? And what do you do if you're not on the banker's hours?
Well, when I'm not on the banker's hours, I'm pretty much on my family hours. Right. So I love the work. I enjoy my job. I love my family, and I enjoy spending time with them. So it works out real well.
I think I remember last time we were together, we got less than a minute, but it was so exciting. I think you're a big fan of either Andy Griffith or Gunsmoke.
Well, both, actually, but Gunsmoke is my favorite program. And, of course, I know we're short for time, but they're just showing so many reruns for some reason over the last year or two. Yeah. And, of course, I've seen every episode ever generated. Yeah. But that's one of my favorite programs. You
are able to slow down a little bit and have a little time.
I'll record them sometime and just watch them on Sunday afternoon. So
that is hilarious. Tom, thanks so much for being with us this morning. This has been a treat having you on.
Thank you for having me, Greg.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Tommy Bouchette coming up next. We heard him break down that entire idea of banking. I don't know if anyone had ever said that before. I'd surely never thought about it that way, buying and selling money. Buying people's money and then renting it back out. Fascinating concept. Obviously, we were here today talking about Georgetown County. If you've been sitting here the last 30 minutes, you would have heard Tommy Bouchette talking some amazing things about the county. That aspect of treat people right and the growth will happen. That happens every day, not only at Sunbank, but in Georgetown County. If you visited Brook Green Gardens, you'd see that. If you get down here and head down to the Harbor Walk in Georgetown or visit the fishing village of Murrells Inlet, you'd see treating people right and the growth will happen. It's happening every day.